Welcome back. Good morning. It's Sunday, and we're going on a walk. A super fun walk. Where are we going, guys?
We're going
We're going on the Talking Rocks tour.
I thought you wanted me to lay out the whole path.
No, I just wanted you to say something because I feel like it's always me talking in these videos, but moving forward, I'll just say the thing.
Yes.
Okay, but yeah, we're really excited. So we're going to go on a little walkie walk, get our hot girl walks in for today with Keith from Talking Rock Tours. And yeah, let's go see the beauty of Edmonton. Come on.
What a glorious morning to be here in the River Valley to kind of launch my first tour of the year. And it's one of those things to kind of honor you today as a proud Métis myself, to make you an honorary Métis. Because as you know, and again, maybe you don't, that there's over 634 Indigenous nations as well as the Métis Nation here in Canada. And yeah, when you think of Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island, it's just kind of like really eye-opening. So to honor kind of the Inuit to the north, the First Nations of the Great Plains, and of course the Métis as the Indigenous peoples post-contact, you know, with those early European explorers that fell in love with the First Nation women and basically call what we know today as Canada home. So to honor my ancestors, as you can see with my sash, it's slightly different because I'm originally from Saskatchewan. And so my fourth great grandfather, he died on the battlefield, Joseph Ouellette. So to honor him and all those that were silent since 1885, I wear my sash from Batoche. But the sash that I'm going to bestow on you today during our tour is the actual Métis Nation of Alberta sash. So it's almost like choose your own adventure, because when you think the men back in the day, right, those hardworking voyageurs that essentially when you look at the legislature, right, that was the last Fort Edmonton. And when you think of Fort Edmonton Park, modern version, it's a replica of where they lawn bowl south of the legislature. So when you think when they kissed their wife and kids goodbye from Fort Edmonton back during the fur trade, to go all the way to Fort Garry and back was a 6-month journey. So you can imagine the men wore it around their waist, not only to keep their pants up, but keep their guts in. And of course, when you think of all the different aspects of the fabric, right, you could use it if you split your pants, right, just many uses, or keeping track of what you traded. But as culture evolves, right, with the ladies now, and with this, you know, River Valley Discovery Tour that Talking Rock Tours offers, it's like you can be a Métis princess. So if you want it over the shoulder, across the heart, or if you want it around the waist in the middle to be that hardworking voyager, or for myself with the wife and 3 kids, I wear it to the left, and single males or ladies also can wear it on the right. But you see, it's not, you know, kind of rooted in, you know, the original history. It's something as culture it evolves. So yeah, you get that choice, Bridget. If you want to be a Métis princess, you want to be a hardworking voyager, it's kind of like up to you.
I will go with, I would love to be a princess, but maybe I'll be hardworking today. So I think I'll do it around the waist. Okay,
great. And do you want it in the middle as that hardworking voyager, or are you single, taken?
I'm taken.
Okay, so you wear it like me.
Perfect.
And just to show you, because it's like one of those things being in the Navy as well, right? The joke is if you don't know how to tie knots, just tie lots. So if you kind of turn to your right, we'll just show the camera how we actually tie up a sash. And when you think of your school times where you should be focusing on what the teacher's talking about, right? I remember making paper airplanes, so you can kind of see that analogy. Right, it's basically a 90-degree fold on both sides, and the part that's on the outside goes under and over. So you can see what we call, technically from a knot standpoint, it's like a half hitch, and then you just cinch it. So the top one goes up, the bottom one goes down, and then you just dress it. And then you can just shift it to the left, and there we go.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So welcome to the Michif culture, right? The traditional name of the Métis.
Thank you.
Yeah, Marseille.
Merci.
So you see it's very close to Merci.
Yeah.
It's like Marseille. Yeah, and there's 3 different language families for Michif. So there's Michif French, Michif Cree, and Michif Ojibwe.
Oh, wow.
And it's very powerful that the UN, I think it was like a decade or so, really realized that Michif, because there's only, I think back then was 50 fluent speakers. Now it's growing because even the UN saw the need for revitalizing it, because it's such an important, complicated, complex type of language, right? Because usually with Indigenous language, it's all about verbs,
Yes.
right? It's words that come from the land, and no different with the Indigenous that evolved to the Métis, right? Because it's like action words. And when you're combining European culture with Indigenous culture, there's kind of that evolution, and it's important with that fabric of connectionness.
And so the three languages, are they greatly similar or are they vastly different?
Well, when you think of like Michif French, right, there's the la and li, and there's more of that French component, right? Ojibwe is more Ojibwe with maybe Cree and with French, right? They're very unique, and it depends on which region of the Great Plains.
Ah, okay. I see.
Right? Because when you think of the Cree peoples, right, or I like to always refer to them with their traditional territorial name, like Nehewak, right? And there's like OG Cree, there's Swampy Cree, there's Woodland Cree, there's Plains Cree. So you can see such a variety of culture. And when you think for the Cree itself, with all the different variations, it's literally Quebec to the east, to the Rocky Mountains to the west, to Great Slave to the north, and almost to the Niitsitapi, the Blackfoot Nation, to the south. Right? Not quite Montana, but you can see such a huge geographic area that encompasses what we know today as Edmonton. For the River Valley Discovery Tour, it's Cree homeland or Nehewak homeland. But it's not just for the Cree, right? There's over a dozen First Nations that claim Edmonton as home, and the traditional territorial name in Cree or Nehewak is Amiskwichi-Waskahigan, which means Beaver Hills House. And when we officially launch the tour at our next stop, you'll understand why this place is called Beaver Hills. And of course now we know as Beaver Hills House with that fur trade influence.
With my hands on the rock.
All right, well, Tanshe, Bridget, and welcome to the River Valley Discovery Tour. My name is Keith Diacu, and it's such an honor to be with you here today because when you think of Edmonton, the capital city of Alberta, right, it begs the question, what was this place called before then, right? As we strip away the layers of history, right, it was basically Treaty 6 territory before that, right, the signing of Treaty 6, and then when you think of the Nehewak that we mentioned earlier, the Cree peoples, right, the traditional territorial name of this sacred place, as we know as Edmonton's River Valley, was Amiskwichi-Waskahigan, which means Beaver Hills House. And we're also connected to the Beaver Hills Biosphere, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, right? It's a protected area. And of course, Elk Island National Park's part of it. So again, when you think of our relations with the animals, but also relations to national parks and surrounding areas, you can see why the Nehewak people called it Beaver Hills or Beaver Hills House, right? When you think of that influence of the fur trade. Because you can see these poplar trees, right? The runners are sprouting because these were harvested last summer. And, just having kind of a miniature version of how the beavers harvest, anything from poplars to birch trees, and then they strip the bark. And so they utilize it to support their family, but then also it's a foodstuff, right? It's like they eat the bark, but then they use the wood for, their building material for their lodges. And when I think of all the different spirit animals, my favorite is the beaver, which is a misk, right? You can see Amiskwichi-Waskahigan. A misk is the word for beaver in English. Because they never hibernate, they're not lazy, they're always hardworking. Kind of no surprise it was that Molson Canadian commercial, right? With the beaver. And to me, it should be on the next $1,000 bill, right? Not a nickel, right? It's such a foundational component, especially during the fur trade. That was the currency.
Yeah.
Right? It didn't have the queen or now the king on the money. It was the NB, which was a spelling mistake for MB. So that I'll show you later with the token that was the currency during the fur trade. Right? From May 2nd, 1670 to 1907, that was the currency. Every beaver pelt, basically, you had to basically pile up 5 to get a token of 5. And with regards to not only seeing the evidence of the beaver, right, tending to its family, building momentous kind of like structures, because there's even believe it or not, when you think of Lewis and Clark days, there are even beaver dams that can be seen from the ISS, the International Space Station.
Really?
They're also finding, because now with GIS software, they're kind of utilizing these old explorer maps, like from the David Thompson and even before that, and then matching it to actually beaver dams that are still in existence today. So as that connection, right, with, for that reference point, if you will. Yeah. And then when you look out, right, to cross the mighty North Saskatchewan River to that modern landscape on the other side of the beautiful Walterdale Bridge, well, that's the Rossdale Flats. And the aspect of the River Valley Discovery Tour, because it's become so popular, and I basically have been trying to do like a fire hose of information, right? Whether I have 2 hours with people in the past or 5 hours, I was trying to give as much of the history hiding in plain sight that literally this summer I'll be launching kind of 2 versions so that I can kind of pace myself and give those nuggets of very meaningful information that people retain it. Because when you think of any kind of classroom experience or outdoor experience, if you have too much, it's hard to retain much of it, right? So, it's kind of that feedback from my geo explorers in the past that, hey, you should probably create 2, and then you can have that repeat business and people can soak it in more. And when you think across, the mighty North Saskatchewan River on the north side, well, that's the Rossdale Flats. So when you think we have 10,000 years of history hiding in plain sight, right? It's very powerful. It's, one of those goosebump moments as an Albertan, as an Edmontonian. We should be very proud that we have such a sacred gathering place that's been around since the last ice age, right? And it hasn't been disrupted from a geologic standpoint. All of that occupation since the last ice age to present day, it's all there, hiding in plain sight. And it should be also that other proud moment, that awe moment, that one of the things when I was a U of A student, I really wanted to go to Egypt. That was on my bucket list. So, I was one of those obnoxious 20-year-olds climbing the pyramids where security was waving me down and like going to Saqqara, right, 4,700 years ago when that, mud brick step pyramid was built south of the Giza complex. And here we have in the middle of Edmonton, a place, a very small place that we'll be smudging later, is representative of that 10,000 years of history hiding in plain sight. And it's just very powerful and one of those kind of long-term requests, right? It would be, I really hope with the River Valley Alliance and getting this as a historic river, that we kind of build it as, that urban national park, and then one day having that designation, because of course there's such a journey to go from kind of being recognized from a municipal level to a provincial to a country level. But I'm very hopeful that doing a tour experience such as this, the Husky Geo and the La Terre Geo Tours, which is what we're experiencing today, that it'll really highlight with your audience that, we have such a gem in the middle of Edmonton that we really need to promote that to the world. Because don't get me wrong, Wayne Gretzky was one of my role models growing up, right? And Wayne, as well as West Edmonton Mall, put Edmonton on the map. But there's just so much more to Edmonton, right? When you think of this ribbon of green and that history hiding in plain sight, right? There's so much to be proud of here in Edmonton.
The water rushing past,
They showed what the flood was like in 1898, World War II, Expo 86 in 1915, the big one that literally ruined John Walter, right? His business almost went belly up because he had a lumberyard business, right? And all of this was flooded, right? If you ever get a chance to go to the provincial archives, there's amazing photos, like the devastation from the 1915 flood. Yeah, and they also put a loaded train on the low-level bridge just to keep it intact. And there's imagery, like literally the water of the mighty North Saskatchewan River was going through the wheels of the train cars. So that engineer on that train, imagine the pucker power, sitting in that locomotive, hoping that the weight of the train would hold the bridge in place. Because again, when you think of the beautiful, big, high-level bridge, most people think that's the oldest bridge, but it's actually the low-level bridge was the first one.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. I did not know.
Yeah, so more history, right? Yeah. It's like 1900, 1913 between the two bridges.
never felt so alive.
So as I mentioned earlier, Bridget, with the last major geologic event, right? Because you can see we're not on a plate boundary. We don't have volcanoes. But again, you know, people kind of think, again, sadly, right? People think like a rock is a rock. But the last major geologic event for the Great Plains was the late Wisconsin glaciation. And it began 40,000 years ago. And at the height of it was like 20 to 22,000 years ago. And it's hard to believe when you look at the Walterdale Bridge, it's roughly 55 meters in height. But when you think at that height, which this was part of the Laurentide ice sheet, the epicenter being Hudson's Bay, we have to stack, like Lego, over 22 Walterdale bridges to get how thick the Laurentide ice sheet was at that particular time, right? We had the Cordilleran ice sheet to the west. And if you've gone skiing to Jasper and you've driven on Highway 16 or the Yellowhead, right? Again, another important name for that roadway. Marlborough, that village, is that connection to the past too, where the Laurentide ice sheet that covered the Rocky Mountains met the Laurentide ice sheet that covered the Great Plains. And again, rocks have stories to tell, because when you think, I'm a professional geologist, but there's glaciologists, and they look at the rocks, because generally speaking, the Western Canadian Sedimentary Basin, as we know as the Great Plains, is kind of boring, right? Because it's siltstones, mudstones, sandstones, conglomerate, right? Very much all sedimentary. But the sexy rocks are out east or up north, right? The granites, the gneisses, and, you know, this pink granite that's from the Canadian Shield, it's roughly 3 billion years in age. Well, all of that was basically sprinkled across the plains. So as the Laurentide ice sheet kept building momentum and thickness and ice, as it kept advancing to the west over Amiskwaciy-Waskahigan, as we know as Edmonton, to get to that 1.2 kilometers of thickness, it's plucking the bedrock along the way. And then as it was retreating, right, it began around 14,500 years ago. We had that interglacial period where the ice started thinning, they started separating, and around 11,500 years ago, there's this massive glacial lake. Because you imagine you have this huge ice dam towards the Rocky Mountains, the Cordilleran ice sheet, and the Laurentide ice sheet kind of just working its way towards Elk Island or towards Lloydminster. Right? It had nowhere for that water to go. But about 10,500 years ago, everything was able to dissipate because the retreat of the ice was far enough back that these pre-glacial channels basically were enhanced. So when I was saying about those markers underneath the Walterdale Bridge, especially the 1915 flood, it's like mind-blowing to think the volume of water, because when we look to the modern day, like you see the Enbridge skyscraper, the Hotel McDonald, right north of the Walterdale or the Rossdale power plant. And then for all with the university students and others that live in the multifamily, that's the crest of each of the channel edges. So to the north being downtown Edmonton, the U of A campus, and like Saskatchewan Drive on the south side. So hard to believe, right? Especially if you've been to Lethbridge, you really get an appreciation there, and it's no different than here. And so when all of that water is able to dissipate, the animals return and the people return. And it's no surprise, because again, some people think, oh, Edmonton must have hired some big engineering firm. You know, back in the day, because when the high-level bridge was built in 1913, or the Walterdale Bridge built in 2016, right? But these are those natural fords. These are those natural crossing points on the mighty North Saskatchewan River that's been around since time immemorial, before the Europeans came. So again, right, we learn from the animals, we also learn from Indigenous people, right? Because all those first newcomers, right, the early Europeans, if it wasn't for the First Nations teaching them how to survive in those harsh winters, or where to meet, right? Again, we learn from each other, and it's no different from thousands of years ago to today, right? We just need to humble ourselves, because again, we think we're better than everything because we're the great white shark of the North America. But really, when you look at it, we all share Mother Earth, and everything is important, from the smallest insect to a mighty bridge. And again, the rocks that were left behind is like that pink granite. And one of my favorite things with my kids, and again, from a safety standpoint, you want to come kind of like this time, but again, be very, very careful that you don't go on the ice. So it's either early spring or late fall to walk the shorelines, because once it starts peaking, because again, a lot of people in Edmonton drink bottled water, and it's kind of like mind-blowing, because our water source is the Columbia ice fields. So again, having this ribbon of green 20 times larger than Central Park, but we also have water that comes from the Columbia ice fields. You can't have anything better,
Yeah.
right? And it's just that aha moment too. But when the ice melts and this peaks, you definitely don't want to be here in July, like the end of June and July, right? Away from the, from a rock collecting standpoint, right? Like enjoy the river, but be safe.
And when you take away my names and the stories of my life are returned.
All right, so Bridget, we're on the beautiful Walterdale Bridge overlooking the mighty North Saskatchewan River. And this is one of those key components of this new version of the River Valley Discovery Tour, right? The USGI Geo. And it's kind of interesting, again, trying to create this new word, right? Because for myself, being a professional geologist, but also a proud Métis, I wanted to create a new word because, again, some of the feedback I've been getting in the last couple of years that we don't know you're an Indigenous tour operator because why isn't it reflected in the title of your tours, right? You need to have more Indigenous words. And it's like I took that and kind of ran with it. So I thought, well, what better way to kind of create a new tour name? Because Uskie is earth and Nehewak or Cree, and this being this special place, this gathering place for the Cree as well as more than a dozen First Nations that call Miskwichi, Waskagan home, right? And then the Geo to honor the geosciences, right? That prefix, right? Like for geology, geomorphology, geochemistry. So you can see by combining, because of course the first peoples came before science, so to honor them first, because again, it's so important to kind of showcase that. Because I was saying kind of to you, kind of off the camera that, it kind of irks me when we do land acknowledgements and they throw in the Métis ahead of either First Nation or Inuit. It really should be Inuit, First Nation, Métis, or First Nation, Inuit, and Métis, right? We came after, right? We were the first Indigenous group post-contact. They are the original. Do you know what I mean? And it's important because I see it, whether it's in print or on the news or even during a public kind of gathering. So it's good to kind of highlight, right? Because we want to walk in a good way with good intentions. And what better way to do a tobacco offering in the spirit of that, right? Because we want to give thanks, right? Because saying kind of earlier too, right? We seem to be in a world of take. Need to be able to pause, but we also have to give Mother Earth a gift in return. And tobacco, with my pouch, is one of the 4 sacred medicines. And when you think of this beautiful beaded medicine wheel, right? White depicts the north, yellow depicts the east, red depicts the south, and blue or black, depending on which First Nations, depicts the west. So what better way to not only do many layers of meaning, so to not only offer tobacco to Mother Earth, but also offer it in the 4 directions. But we're going to add something special, because we're going to offer it also to Mother Earth, 4 directions to Creator or God, right? Whatever you believe. And then the last one is for you. So whether you're going through something, you're struggling with something, your family, it's literally that leftover tobacco is for you to say a prayer for you. So you can see it has a lot of meaning, and you want to be in the moment, right? Because normally we don't want to photograph or videotape protocol, but that's okay for this, not for the smudging ceremony. Okay. And the other thing is, why do you think you give with the left? Because that's also the secret sauce. Because again, a lot of newcomers and non-Indigenous people, they want to learn more, especially when you think after Kamloops 215, right? It was a huge awakening, right? A lot of people wanted to do something, but they weren't sure what to do. And they're like, I don't want to offend. But it's almost like, how do you offend if your heart's in the right place, right? You just go up to them. But then as you learn, especially from a program like this and the knowledge that I'm sharing with you, is the secret sauce is just offering tobacco. And you offer with the left. And why do you think you offer with the left?
Because it has is this the side that has a vein straight to your heart, maybe?
Well, and it's connected to your heart. That's right.
To your heart. Oh, okay.
So yeah, you want to give with the left and take with the right.
Okay.
And for today as well, right, we're going to offer tobacco in those 7 directions, but also learn some Indigenous words for thank you. Because again, you know, the law of attraction, also gratitude. You want to give thanks and all the blessings, especially when you wake up every day, right? We kind of forget that, right? We have our cup of coffee and then we need to get going, but really almost set your alarm 5 minutes earlier so you can have some time to ground yourself and reflect on what you're grateful for before you tackle all the busyness of today's society.
Yeah, and just appreciate that, like you said, that you woke up today.
Mm-hmm.
So much good.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll just offer it in your right hand, so that we'll offer it right with your left, and you can smell it. My goal is, right now, one of my good friends, Dion Redgun, he gifted me a tobacco plant. So I am drying the leaves, so I want to create my own. So this is currently store-bought tobacco, but it's pipe tobacco. Because again, being a traditionalist, right? I want to keep it as authentic, because it's crazy. When I went to my first tobacco cigar place, I didn't realize there's like 50 different flavors of tobacco, being a non-smoker,
wow. Yeah.
right? And the thing is, my parents were like chain smokers growing up. So you can see this was also an enlightenment, because I always associated cigarettes / tobacco as cancer causing. Mm-hmm. But it's all the chemicals that they put in to preserve it. Right, and it's just one of those things, right? It's just, you have to always have an open mind when you're learning, because, you know, I had that stigma. But tobacco is one of those 4 sacred medicines that we'll learn about today. All right. So another awakening I had, because I was using previously on my tours Hi to honor the Nehewak or the Cree. But to do something new, right, we'll face each other, right, to honor Mother Earth, right? In some ways, I guess we'll do it so that it still kind of lands on the water, being the more sacred of the 4 elements. So to say, I give you thanks, right, especially to Mother Earth, the proper way in Nehewak, not hi. In some ways, it was like the telephone game, right? Because again, it's like short to the point. But I, again, always want to honor people in the right way. So it's Kinanam Skumtin.
Kinanam Skumtin?
Yeah, you see it's kind of like 4 parts. So Kinanam Skumtin. And almost like the kum, you like lift yourself, right, for that giving thanks. So Kinanam Skumtin.
Kinanam Skumtin.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Yeah, you're a great student. So yeah, and then you just basically give that pinch, right? Here we are to give it to Mother Earth by learning the Cree word for thank you. So Kinanam Skumtin. Now we face east, right? And again, as I was showing you earlier, like the medicine wheel, the beautiful beaded work, it's one of those things also to encourage people to learn, because each direction has teachings, right? So don't be afraid, because now you know the secret sauce. Offer tobacco, right, to go to a sweat, right, to go to powwows, right, to expose yourself, because that's the only way. It's like anything. You got to jump in with both feet. You can't just read it online, right? You really have to put yourself there and experience there, yeah.
Yeah, and learn from the source.
And my favorite word for thank you is to honor the Ojibwe people to the east. And during the pandemic, I basically took this amazing job bringing electricity and fiber optic connectiveness to 23 remote Indigenous communities in Northwest Ontario. Wow. They have a Ballard project, 1,800 kilometers of transmission line that's 51% owned by those Indigenous communities. And it's hard to believe when you think that was 2021, that 23 communities in Ontario didn't have electricity, right? They're using diesel electric generators, like, you know, diesel generators to basically, when you think for cooking, you know, Christmas dinner, and you have to turn the lights off so that you don't blow a fuse.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, one of those things that, doing that geotechnical word, is every time we disrupted Mother Earth to dig test pits for each of the big towers, we had to offer tobacco. And we also had to give thanks. And that thanks was miigwech.
Miigwech?
Yeah, so the next time you have a family gathering, instead of saying cheese or fromage, I want you to say miigwech. Because the louder you say it, the bigger your smile. So it's always to honor them, right? Because I also said earlier too, right? There's a Nehewak component that are Oji Cree, which is like Ojibwe and Cree. Yeah, so it's very powerful. So to honor the Ojibwe, Miigwech. And now to the south, right, we're going to be later on today. You can almost see at the top of what I call Lover's Hill, where the Indigenous Art Park, being River Lot 11, where a proud Métis family lived there for 34 years. So to honor the Métis, myself included, it's Marcy. And you can see it's very close to Merci, but it's spelled Maarssii. So to honor the Métis, or the traditional name being Michif, right, Marcy. And now to the west. Until I started Talking Rock Tours, I had no idea there were Stoney Nakoda people west of Edmonton, right? There's reserves like Lake Wabamun, by Whitecourt, that the Stoney Nakoda, like descendants of Sitting Bull, like the Sioux people. Like when you think Lakota, Nakota, Dakota, the Stoney people. And what better way, especially me as a rock hound and as a professional geologist, to honor Indigenous people that are the Stonies, right? The Stoney Nakoda. And I also love this word too. And to say thank you, it's Ishnish.
Ishni.
Yeah. So Ishnish. And now to the north, right? In some ways, the other forgotten people, the Inuits, right? To honor them. And again, you know, the three territories that make up Nunavut, Northwest Territories, and the Yukon. Again, the Inuit mostly being in Nunavut and Northwest Territories, there's different dialects. And with my military job, I was fortunate last year I went to Resolute Bay. Like I swam in the Northwest Passage.
Oh, wow.
Right? And learning about them and being well above the tree line and being in the high Arctic was very powerful. And to meet those hardy people that live on the land with nothing but rock and ocean, but still having that amazing spirit in their eye and that resiliency. So to honor the Inuit people of the north, it's Nakumi. And this is more Baffin Island, like Iqaluit, their capital of Nunavut. But yeah, to honor them, right, Nakumi. And now, right, for Creator, because again, we're kind of utilizing the water a lot, but this is kind of new, right, with the 7 different offerings. But like to Creator, and like I said, for myself, being a proud Catholic as well, 4th degree knight, right, so honor Creator to honor God, or for what you believe, right? It's like to take in that beautiful sunshine, you know, creating that vitamin D, and just to give thanks, right, to that higher power that created everything, right? And because I love Miigwech, I'm going to say Miigwech. And then you see I have quite a bit left. So for me, right, I'm going to just kind of, you know, we can do it in solidarity or just yourself, but it's kind of cool with like mini iceberg after we gave thanks to the north. But yeah, it's just to pray for yourself. And what I do with the leftover, right, I gift it all, right? I kind of pan it, because it's like anything. When you're given a gift, you don't want to give it back. And because I took the tobacco out of the pouch, I want to gift it all. Right? So again, you know, when I have a large group, sometimes there's only a little bit left, but because we have quite a bit, right? It's just like speaking from the heart to whatever you want to pray for today, for yourself or your family.